It's 3 a.m. You're awake again. Not because you drank coffee too late, not because you're excited about tomorrow, but because your brain has decided tonight is the perfect time to rehearse every possible disaster. What if the car breaks down? What if your rent goes up? What if your dog needs surgery? What if your hours get cut? What if you lose your job? And now you're lying there staring at the ceiling, running emergency scenarios like a human spreadsheet. How much is in checking? When does the credit card bill hit? Can I float it until payday? What can I delay? What happens if two things go wrong in the same month? If you've lived like that, you know this isn't just stress. It's a full body feeling. Your chest gets tight, your stomach sinks, your brain won't shut off. And then people say things like, just save more money, as if the problem is arithmetic. But the truth is, there's a number where something deeper starts to change. For a lot of people, that number is $10,000. Not because it makes you rich, it doesn't. Not because it solves every problem, it won't. But because for many people, $10,000 is the point where money stops feeling like pure emergency management and starts becoming stability. And what changes first isn't your net worth. It's your nervous system. It's your decision making. It's your posture. It's your identity. This video is about why the first $10,000 feels different from every dollar before it, and why the internal shift matters even more than the math. If you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, you know that every decision becomes a calculation, not a preference, a calculation. You're not asking, what do I want? You're asking, what can I survive? At the grocery store, you're standing there debating name brand cereal versus generic, not because you care that much about cereal, but because somehow that extra $4 here, $6 there, $12 over there can spiral into, wait, am I about to mess up my whole week? You look at the cart total like it's a blood pressure monitor. And it sounds dramatic until you've lived it. Because when money is tight, small choices stop being small. A takeout meal isn't just dinner, it's guilt. A copay isn't just a bill, it's disruption. A $25 mistake can feel like it has the power to wreck the entire month. That's what people who haven't experienced financial scarcity often miss. Poverty, or even just prolonged financial instability, is not only about having less money, it's about having less margin for error. And when your margin for error is basically zero, your brain stays on high alert. You become hyper-aware of timing. Timing of bills, timing of paychecks, timing of overdrafts, timing of whether this purchase clears before that deposit lands. That kind of life trains you to think short-term because you have to. You're not irresponsible. You're responding to the environment you're in. If every week feels like financial triage, of course long-term planning feels abstract. Of course investing feels far away. Of course wealth building sounds like advice for somebody else. Because when you're in survival mode, you are not building, you are plugging leaks. And this is why the first $10,000 matters psychologically. It's often the first time you're not living with constant financial fragility. Not luxury, not abundance, just a little room to breathe. Now let's talk about the biology. When you're under chronic stress, your body doesn't treat that like a philosophical problem. It treats it like a threat. One of the hormones involved in that stress response is cortisol. Cortisol itself isn't bad. You need it. It helps your body respond to challenges. But when financial stress becomes relentless, when the threats feel constant, uncontrollable, and unresolved, your system doesn't get enough opportunities to recover. Chronic stress is associated with anxiety, sleep trouble, and long-term wear and tear on the body. The American Psychological Association has repeatedly identified money as a major source of stress and notes that ongoing stress becomes especially damaging when people feel they lack the resources to cope. And the connection isn't just emotional. Research on financial strains suggests that money pressure can affect stress biology indirectly by increasing negative emotion, lowering positive emotion, and through that pathway relating to higher daily cortisol output. In other words, when life feels financially unsafe, your body often acts like it's dangerous. That's why the first $10,000 can feel so powerful. Not because $10,000 is a magical number, but because for a lot of people, it finally creates enough safety that everyday problems stop registering as existential threats. Think about the check engine light test. Before savings, that light comes on and your whole body drops. Instant panic. Because your brain isn't thinking, I should schedule a repair. It's thinking, how bad is this? Can I afford this? What if it's $900? What if it's $1,800? Do I put it on a card? Do I skip rent? Do I call in sick? Is this the month everything falls apart? That's not inconvenience, that's alarm. But with $10,000 in the bank, the check engine light is still not fun. You're not thrilled, you don't love spending the money, but it becomes a mild annoyance, not a financial apocalypse. And that difference matters. Because when your body stops interpreting normal life problems as total catastrophe, you think differently, sleep differently, and respond differently. That's the hidden power of savings. It doesn't just change your bank balance, it changes your baseline. Here's another thing people underestimate. Being broke is mentally expensive. There's a concept called decision fatigue, the idea that the more decisions you have to make, the worse the quality of those decisions can become over time. And when money is tight, you don't just make a few extra decisions, you make dozens. Should I buy this now or wait 3 days? Which pasta is cheapest by the ounce? Can I fill the whole tank or just half? Should I pay this bill today or hope I can push it to Friday? Can I say yes to this birthday dinner without putting myself behind? Should I cancel the subscription or risk needing it later? Those are not just money choices, they are attention choices, energy choices, bandwidth choices. And when your brain is constantly occupied with urgent trade-offs, it has less capacity left for strategy. That's why emergency savings are associated with more than just financial relief. Vanguard's recent research found that people with at least $2,000 in emergency savings reported substantially higher financial well-being and spent far less time each week thinking about and dealing with their finances than those with no emergency savings. So imagine what happens when you get to $10,000. You stop burning mental fuel on 50 micro decisions a day. You stop obsessing over whether one wrong grocery run is going to create a domino effect. You stop using premium cognitive real estate to solve tiny emergencies. And that frees up something incredibly valuable, mental energy for bigger decisions. Now you can think about, how do I increase my income? What skill should I build next? Should I negotiate my salary? Can I move to reduce my monthly overhead? What does the next 5 years look like? This is the part people miss. Money in the bank is not just purchasing power, it's thinking power. When every dollar is under attack, your brain finally gets promoted to cashier to strategist. Now let's talk about confidence. Because one of the strangest things about having savings is that it changes how other people experience you. Not because you become flashy, but because desperation becomes less visible. When you have no savings, every opportunity feels loaded. A job interview isn't just an interview, it's survival. A salary negotiation isn't just a conversation, it's dangerous. You want the raise, but you also feel like you can't risk saying the wrong thing, asking for too much, or creating tension. Why? Because if your money is at zero, you don't feel like you have room to withstand friction. But when you've built real savings, you walk differently. You're calmer, more selective, less panicked, less likely to over-explain, less likely to accept the first bad offer because you're terrified of uncertainty. That's the confidence dividend. Here's a simple example. Let's say there's a networking event in your city. It costs $50 to attend. If you have zero savings, that $50 can feel reckless, even if there's a real chance you meet someone who helps you land a better role, a client, or a raise worth thousands. Your brain may still say, nope, too risky. Because when you're financially fragile, preserving the present feels more urgent than investing in the future.
But if you've got $10,000 in the bank, you can think in probabilities. You can say, this might be worth it. You're willing to spend $50 for a possible $5,000 opportunity because you finally have enough stability to tolerate uncertainty. That's huge. Savings change your relationship with risk, not reckless risk, calculated risk. And that's where careers often start accelerating. Because the people who can invest in relationships, skills, travel, certifications, exposure, and opportunity are often the people who already have enough cushion to stop thinking like every move might kill them. That's not a character flaw, that's psychology. And once you understand that, you stop shaming yourself for what was hard before. You start realizing, I wasn't lazy, I was scared, and now I'm less scared. That matters.
But maybe the biggest change of all is identity. When most people start saving, it feels like a temporary diet. You tell yourself, I'm cutting back for now. I'm being good this month. I'm trying to save. That language matters because it frames saving as a short-term behavior, not a permanent part of who you are. But somewhere on the road to the first $10,000, something changes. You stop feeling like a person who is trying to save and start becoming a person who keeps money. That's a totally different identity. A saver identity says, I leave margin. I don't spend everything I make. I protect future me. I can hold on to money without immediately releasing it. And once that identity forms, the game changes. That's why people often say the second 1,000 is easier than the first, and in many cases, the second 10,000 is easier than the first two. Not because the math changes, because you changed. You built systems. You built restraint. You built standards. You built patience. You built proof. You now have evidence that you are capable of consistency. And identity-based change is powerful because it survives mood. If saving is just a motivation phase, it disappears when life gets busy. But if saving becomes part of your self-concept, you return to it again and again. You don't need to feel inspired every day. You just act like the kind of person you've become. That's the real milestone. The account balance matters, but the identity underneath it matters more. So yes, the first $10,000 matters, but not because it turns you into a different class of person, and not because it solves life. It matters because of what it does inside you. It gives you breathing room. It lowers the emotional temperature. It reduces panic. It protects your attention. It makes better decisions easier. It gives you the courage to think beyond next Friday. And most importantly, it changes the story you tell yourself about who you are. If you're at zero right now or close to it, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not need to start big. Start with $25 a month. Start with $50 a month. Start with one automatic transfer that feels almost too small to matter. Because small, repeated acts are how identity gets built. And the person you become while saving that first $10,000, more disciplined, calmer, more deliberate, less afraid, is honestly more valuable than the money itself. The money helps, but the transformation is the real asset. So start small, stay consistent, and keep going long enough to meet the version of you who no longer panics at every turn. That person is worth building. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more videos on money, behavior, and building wealth without losing your mind.